My name is Abina Johnson, and this is Focus on Liberia. Hit it! From Cape Mount to Cape Palmer, mountain back to Atlantic Ocean, Obomi Hills to Pocondre, to educate, elevate, and promote. Yeah, focus on Liberia, for Liberia, Liberia, for Liberia, yeah, 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 yeah. From Monday to Sunday, from Monday to Sunday, it's focus on Liberia. Talk about home affairs, hey, in diaspora, current affairs, hey, reliable information, history, ooh, talking about culture, yeah, politics, education, entertainment, yeah, business, sports, advertisement, articulation. Focus on Liberia. Focus on Liberia. Focus on Liberia. From Monday to Sunday. Focus on.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another session of Focus on Liberia on the Marketplace. I am your co-host, Gabriel. I am in the studio today with my good friend, Percy Harris. For those of you who've been following us, we had a discussion last week on the impact of the VAT that was just is about to be introduced as a new tax policy. I think last week what we did, we compare it to the GST, which is the current tax system that we have, and we look at the differences. The differences between the two. But today we want to take it a little further and do what we didn't do on last Saturday, which is to talk about the impact on businesses, the economic impact large, as a whole. We have several questions that we would like to, you know, have answered. Um, just so this is what we're going to do today. So if wherever you are today, just please join us, share it, and bring your comments and perspective as well as we explore the economic side and the business side of the supposedly prospective new tax system that we're about to adopt in Liberia. Percy, uh,
Yeah,
welcome on the show, my man.
thank you, Gabby. I'm glad to be here. At least today, I'm not being pulled apart. Yeah, I missed a considerable part of that conversation last week. So,
Yeah,
yeah. So, I'm glad to be here. At least we'll be able to dive deeper into what this new tax means for the
yeah,
country economically,
all
you
right.
as an individual, and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm glad that you're here. I know one thing I like about you is that you have this, your history ways when it comes to, the economic history of Liberia. So I think hopefully we can dive into that, um, context as well, because the more you know about your history, the better clarity it gives you about your
Yeah.
future and where you are.
Yeah.
So that is always a good lens to look at things. So as I said earlier, there are a few questions we want to answer. The first one being is which is a better and competitive tax policy? So we're looking at the GST or the VAT. Is the GST or VAT a better tax system? The other question is which is um, we also want to look at it regionally from that competitive standpoint. Which tax policy make us more competitive? Will the transition to the VAT make us more competitive in the region, or are we just looking at it from the broad-based tax collection standpoint in the country? So that's another question we want to take a look at. The other one is, how does VAT in its broader implementation impact businesses, both from a short term and long term? And as I said before we came on, we're talking about, yes, we may, I have an inclination that, I'm, kind of a little bit biased against that, but, I want to expand that thought process to say maybe in the short term, it may not look like a good tax policy right now, but does it become beneficial in the long term? And we're going to explore those uh, uh, discussion in terms of looking at it from that lens as well. And finally, I think this is something that you were given a context on before we came on the platform, which I think I would like you to go deeper into this is, did the government or Liberia do any cost benefit analysis or any research at all before considering the switch to VAT? How depth was the research, and also how, you know, what did we consider? Did we look at the library economy, and what angle did we take to be able to finally conclude that, what, this is the best tax policy, we're switching to it? So those are, I think, what is the four questions that we have thought out, and I think there might be other that come up as we have a discussion to hopefully have time to be able to explore it. So yeah, let's jump into it. Any thought before we go right into it?
No, yeah, I think the full points needs to be addressed, not just from what it means, but we have to give, like you said, give context historically and
Mm-hmm.
economically what that means and
Right.
what have happened before. We tend to start these conversations from where we are,
Mm-hmm.
right? There were people in this country way before, people that ran this country before us,
Yeah.
and things they did had consequences on the country, the way they have developed and what they have turned out to be. So it good
Mm-hmm.
times to give perspective to these especially things like tax. Liberia became an independent country because of taxes. Nobody should
Yeah.
independence for Liberia was because of taxes. It was solely because of taxes that Liberia decided to be independent. Because
Mm-hmm.
again, the British essentially said, I'm paraphrasing, like
Mm-hmm.
the issue of taxes, collecting taxes is reserved for um countries only, nation states.
Yeah.
And that's what it's for. That's what the British essentially said to Liberia because Liberia wanted to collect taxes. The Commonwealth of Liberia was saying no. If you do trade here, you want to collect that. The British said no. You can't. We're not going to pay taxes to you because basically you're a philanthropic experiment. That's what
Right.
you now a nation state.
Oh boy.
Yeah, the issue of taxes is reserved for countries, what we call
Mm-hmm.
countries, but they used to call it nation states back in the day. It's reserved
Mm-hmm.
for nation states, and if before you can do that, right, you have to be in a nation state. So that highlight brought basically did this maneuver from a commonwealth and just change not really and substantively change anything, but start just name in. I mean, cosmetic change from the Commonwealth of Liberia to the Republic of Liberia. So, in
Yeah.
order for them to be able to be, collect taxes to be recognized, first you have to be a nation state. Secondly, you have to be recognized. So, when she declared independent, you saw that Robert, his first term in office, he went to Europe to, get the recognition that Liberia needed. And
Yeah.
before collect taxes from people from foreign citizens. You have to have treaties with those countries. So his visits were predicated upon that. So he went and got treaties with Great Britain,
Mm-hmm.
France, and, the big powers of the day. So they were able to
Mm-hmm.
get that thing in place to be able to collect taxes. So when we talk about taxes, it's a big thing. So for people to just sit down one day and say, we're gonna bring that new tax here, when the country itself was founded based on taxes. The
Yeah.
idea of the country itself was based on taxes. And there are other instances all throughout the history we will probably piggyback to show the importance of you know what these things meant at the time. And it
Yeah.
still means a lot today. So we should have those like engaging conversations before we start to put things in place like this.
Yeah. No, thank you. I appreciate the historical context of it. For me, as I said, I like history as well, but I think I like the economic part of it. So sometimes to be able to have that historical context gives us, as I said, it gives us a good understanding of where we are, why things are happening now. But I know we list the questions in descending order, but I want us, as we answer them, I want us to. I think this question should be the first question we should ask, which is which whether the government of Liberia did any analysis before considering the switch. I think before we came on, I talked about the current trend right now of the OECD country that they're
Mhm.
trying to move to a global tax base, which is will be about 15%.
Mhm.
And this is, I think, being spearheaded by the United States because they want to make themselves competitive. Uh, Now, from what I think the last discussion we had on Saturday, I think it was Thomas Cannon who said that the switch will put us, I think, about 12 to 15%, which will bring us in line to those OECD's country, right? Um, Whether we consider that, because once you're competing with those largest economy, as a, we're not even a middle country, we're not even a emerging
Middle
country,
income country.
we're frontier, we're a
Yeah,
frontier
um,
country. How do you
yeah.
compete with people that are 500 times your size and have better opportunities than you to put your tax at the same rate? So the question here again, do you think that I know Thomas said it started in 2009, but do you
Mhm.
think it took any, besides just doing the research and say we did our research, do you think they really consider every angle of that implication before uh, considering to switch on it? And what are your thoughts on that? On that?
Look, I think the research was done. As I mean, I don't want to sit here and cast aspersions, right?
Yeah.
I think there are competent people in Liberia, there are knowledgeable people in Liberia, and
Hmm.
so I think that there's some legwork was done
Hmm.
into come into this thing. My point is, even if that research was done, um what does that mean for the country? Have we really sat and consider it, right? Again,
Hmm.
history is very pivotal to these things. Me and you, we talk about these things. We know the mechanics of it, but
Right.
historically, people just make policy nowadays in like, bro, of like trying to research the historicity of what have transpired before. The last time, I'm just gonna give this, right? I think they did.
Right.
I think some research was done, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just because the research was done does not make it appropriate for the country at the particular point in time that we are in, right?
Hmm.
Just because you went and did some research and say, yeah, well, where's this why and whatnot, you know what I mean? It doesn't mean that it's gonna augur well for the country given what it is right now and the situation we find ourselves in, right? So that's it. The last time the Liberian government did that did this kind of thing, we had a whole slew of events that took place. People don't think it's related to those things, right? The last time the
Hmm.
Liberian government went and raised taxes on people to mobilize domestic revenue, because that's what this is about also, right? The reason these guys are bringing about a new tax policy, the primary reason is to mobilize domestic revenue so that
Hmm.
you can have more revenue for budgetary support and to be able to make public service investment and stuff like that, which are all
Hmm.
noble ideas. I think we should do it, but we should do it methodically. The last time Liberia did that, and the way in which she did that was something called the hot taxes, right?
Hmm.
It was a
Hmm.
form of domestic revenue mobilization. So Liberia went, the government in Monrovia at the time went and said, hey, we need to defray, our debt. They were saddled with international debt. We need to defray our debt. We need money for the budget to,
Right.
to, to defray debt and whatnot. And the only place they could look at the time was the indigenous
The hot
people,
tax.
especially
Yeah.
the hot taxes,
Hmm.
and they also started taxing the crewmen, right? The crew people that used to go work on ships,
Hmm.
right? And they would come back and stuff like that. They started to, and these things get dubious at the end of the day. They started to make concessions with the Spanish plantation in Fernando, right? To get Liberian workers to go there, so they charging per head also
Yeah.
at the
Yeah.
end of the day. So these things, people don't think it comes down to this, but it's what the government were trying to do. They were
Yeah.
trying
Yeah.
to they were trying to marshal up domestic revenue, right, to be able to defray debt and do some sort of public service investment, whatever you want to call it at the time. And
Hmm.
what that led to was a disturbance in that part of the country. If you know it now, it's called the Crew Coast War. There were several
Yeah.
wars fought
Yeah.
between the Crew people, which the indigenous people from that side, and the government of Liberia. A lot of people got killed. A lot of people fell um, um, a lot of people got killed. A lot of people ancestors were impacted. If you
Mm-hmm.
listen to the likes of George Bully, you listen to the likes of most of these progressive guys that have linked to the Southeast, they will tell you about what happened to their ancestor or their great grandparents and whatnot. As a result of that, these things have direct links to economics, taxes, whatever you want to put it at. They have direct links to that. So before we do this thing, then we should go back, to revisit those times, why the government did what it did, and how did it impact people there, right? Now, moving forward, yeah, you did the research and whatnot. Me
Mm-hmm.
personally, I just don't think giving Liberia where it is, right? And the government should be transparent about this. They should tell us how this new VAT tax is going to raise more revenue than the GST that we have, because
Right.
what I've been reading and what I've been seeing, it seems like the amount is minute. It's not any kind of, it's not going to be a seismic
A
change in what we
significant
already. Yeah,
differences. Right.
so
Right.
it's nothing seismic going to be happening, because at the end of the day, what's happening is they're increasing rates on the few people that can they're increasing rates on the few people that have the economic
Mm-hmm.
opportunity or means, right? So people that are working, they won't be able to. So you're increasing the rate on a very small group of people that
Right.
have to do anything. So what's going to happen to them, instead of increasing the pool of people that are actually going to come in and pay what we
Mm-hmm.
have now, they're trying to change it to increase the rates on the few group of people that
Mm-hmm.
might be able to, or something, and you're gonna drive almost like you're trying to kill the goose that lay the golden eggs for now.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Mm-hmm.
exactly what VAT is gonna do, or is
Yeah.
trying to do, right? So yes, they did some research. Yes, they like they kind of said in the last conversation, there is a white paper, but what does
Right.
that mean, right? What
Right.
does this tax actually mean to the ordinary Liberian person? What does that mean?
Right. You see, and thank you for even giving that expose. The so I agree with you. The white paper is just a thought research. It doesn't, sometimes it's not conclusive. It's just like
Yeah.
when Bitcoin came out, there was a white paper that tells you how it works and all those things, how to mine it and all those things, and the derivatives and all those things behind it. So white paper, when we say white paper, it's not really like a conclusive research. It's just like, hey, this is the new thing that's happening. This is our thought process behind it, but it doesn't really give a definitive, uh, you know, conclusion in terms of what we think should happen. And there was something that you said, and also what kind said as well, that I thought, kind of maybe c- persuaded the government of Liberia to say this is what we should do. I think one of the things that he said was that every country in the West, when I mean West, I mean in Africa, West Africa, is using VAT, is on the VAT system. We're the only country that's non-VAT compliant, as if being compliant meaning that it's compulsory to get on that. So I think in as much, there's something you also said as well. If you look at the tax variances or differences, right? There's not really much of a significant improvement. So what does
Yeah.
that mean? If you don't have enough significant improvement, that means you're only transitioning because everybody else is already
Is doing
transitioning.
it.
There's not,
That's what I'm
right.
saying.
You're
That
not
the
really benefiting from it, right? If you were
you trying to be
benefiting
part
from
of
it,
you're trying to be part of the popular group. That's what happened. You don't want to be
right,
yourself. And I
right,
have a problem with today's leaders of Liberia, because
right.
Liberia developed the way. Liberia has a unique history. What
Mhm,
for good or bad, right?
mhm,
We have a unique history. That's what makes us unique.
right.
It's not bad to be different.
Exactly.
It's not a bad thing. People make it seem like, oh yeah, we the only country that only use we don't use VAT. So what?
Mhm,
How is what does that means to a Liberian? What does that mean?
right.
People, it's okay to be unique. It's okay to be Liberian, and
Mhm,
you don't have to be to fit in just because of fitting in.
mhm.
And I guess that's why the go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, no, I'm glad you said that. I agree with you, and that I feel the same way too. We don't always have to, you know, do what everyone else is doing. So I think between those two, if you said there's not really much of a significant in terms of tax improvement, right? For I think when we explored it last week, we looked at the difference between VAT and GST, and VAT is a more what I kept referring to as continuous. It's like continuing. You buy a car, you pay tax. You ship the car in, the person pay tax. You buy it from the person, you pay tax. You go to services, you will pay tax. Every time you service it, there's a service fees tax you got to pay. That's VAT for you. Whereas, you know, GST doesn't do any of that. So it put a strain on the small businesses, right? Now it's going to have an impact. But if that impact will cause you to now, in another way, collect too much revenue. So that means the only way you're transitioning is because everyone else is doing it, right? So for me, I think to land on this thing here, right? Yes, there was a white paper, there was a research that was done, but I don't think that research alone, uh, and I will be honest here to say, I don't know the extent of the research. What were the considering factor? What type of variable they control for in terms of what they look at from an economic standpoint, or
Mm-hmm.
all of those things. I don't know what they control for to determine that, to put out that white paper. I don't even know to the extent that was even done, right? So to have that research, I think to piggyback on what you said, should not be the end all be all. Just because you have a research paper should not be the determining factor to say, you know, because we did the research, we're making the decision to go forward. So
And,
for me, I think that's where I stand on that. Yeah.
and that's the thing with our policy people, right? The
Right.
implication, they don't. I don't think we think implications a lot when we do this, when we're making policy for the country, right?
Right.
Think about VAT. VAT is it's not just a new tax structure and whatnot.
Hmm.
The mechanism, there's a whole bit, that's a rebate process bit built into that, right?
Yep.
Where
Yep.
ma-
Yep.
where what manufacturer or small businesses have to do rebates to the government. Is the government even ready for that,
Right.
right? Does they have the capacity to be dealing with rebates, because people are going to be sending rebates back to the government that they have to be remitting back to them for
Hmm.
taxes that they are overpaid, right? So you're coming into what we get in the West here now. We're coming to tax refund and whatever and stuff like that. You coming to, so that's what VAT is going to do. Think about a country like Liberia. Everything is manual. You don't know who is who. You don't have
Mm.
national identification for businesses, for assets, for individuals. You don't know who is who. And then you
Yeah.
introduce a very complex system like this where people are going to be coming to you and standing in line. How do you identify who the government needs to send rebates to?
Right.
These are complex things that I don't know if it was thought up in their research, but they have to come and explain these things to our people. You can just say we want VAT and we want 12%. You have to come and explain these things to the people, because they are VAT is a Eurocentric thing, and
It
anything with
is.
Europe, it's kind of a little cumbersome, right? It's very cumbersome, and given Liberia and where it is right now, you come as you bring. I mean, you can just sit down and say we're going to change to VAT. What does that mean, right? There's a whole slew of things there, because you buy something, you pay the taxes as a manufacturer. The manufacturer, that tax you pay when you sell it, whatever tax it in, you have to send rebate to collect that tax that you already paid, because that means you'll be double paying, right? So
Hmm.
there's a whole slew of things that happen in that people are not talking about,
Hmm.
the mechanics of how these things work, and that's where me and you are, right? I
Yeah.
mean, you can talk about it, but how it impact the ordinary people, how it impact the system, right? What kind of system is in place to deal with the stresses that come with this new thing that you're talking about, right?
Right.
So again, somebody have to come explain to our people, or the legislatures have to take this thing and come back to the experts, or
Hmm.
have more deeper conversation about it before you can put this in place. Otherwise, you can just impose something because it's fashionable and other countries using it and stuff like that. So like we have to conform to it. No, you can't do that to our people. You can't do that to the country.
Yeah, you said something very important, which is that it's Eurocentric, which I agree with, right? So that brings me to this question, and I think from what I've read up on, do we use the gap system or the F? IFRS system from the accounting. I think we that's we use
Liberia
we
that's traditionally anything anything in America, the rules in America that it we use there. So it's when I was in school, when I did
right.
bookkeeping, it was gap,
It
right?
was
So
gap.
I don't know
Okay.
that transition. I don't know if that transition has happened. It hasn't happened in the United States yet. I don't know if
Yeah.
Liberia had transitioned to IFRS,
Right.
but it used to be gap. For all intents and purposes, I'm not sure whether it's still gap. I don't know if Liberia went on to that system,
And
so
you
I
see
can't
the
speak
confusion,
to
and
that.
that's the confusion that I'm talking about. You use a system, a tax system that's Europe, but then you use a accounting
Accounting system that is
system that is
American.
American.
Yeah, that's the bipolarity of Liberia right there, right?
um, yeah, I just figured to ask that question, but anyway, that's very interesting. So I don't know how, because the IFRS
IFRS, yeah,
is the system. The biggest difference between that and gap is how you recognize revenue, right? One,
yeah,
right? And if you have a tax that you're using to collect revenues, that
hmm
is European, Eurocentric, and you have an accounting process or methodology principles that is,
American.
American, which have they both the collection, they how they recognize revenue varies completely different. You just complicate things and just confuse the
Yes,
crap out of people further.
as as an accountant by training, right?
Right.
Again, you struck it right. Like you complicate the process because now, if this guy is doing gap and to be able to conform to Europe to IFRS, there's some sort of conversion you have. So if you have your financial statement gap
Right.
prepared, so you will have to transcribe that. There's a whole mechanism there into
Right.
IFRS, right?
Right.
IFRS, right?
Right.
So that's a whole another burden. It's almost like the same thing I'm talking about with the rebates and stuff, right?
Right.
You
Right.
adding unnecessary, you adding complications that probably is not necessary, right? You're supposed to keep things as simple as they are, especially given the kind of country that you have. You want to keep things as simple as they are. It can be the argument can be because everybody else is doing it. That's not a good
Mhm.
argument. And basically, it seems that that's the argument for this bad thing. Everybody else is doing it, so I'm gonna do it. So if everybody else is going the wrong direction, so you should be going the wrong direction also. I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know. Somebody have to come to explain these things to us.
Yeah. Hopefully that happens. So, and they don't really necessarily have to do that to us. They have to. They can, educate
No, but
the
by us, I
Liberian
mean,
citizen.
but me and you are part of the larger public, right? The larger public.
Yeah.
So it's, when I
Right.
say us, somebody have to come to us and
And
explain what
explain
these
it to the
things mean.
people.
Yeah,
Right.
explain these things to the ordinary person.
I
What
agree.
does that mean for them?
Yeah. All right. So great, great, great. Let's move on to the next question here. I think this will take us deeper into this conversation. So, from what you have read about the VAT, and I think given what we talked about last Saturday, and you know what you know about the VAT and the GST, which do you think is a better and competitive tax policy?
I
Both.
think
I want you to look at this both domestically in the country and also regionally, right? I don't even want to look at the global aspect of it. Just look at it competitively in the country and also.
as you well know, I'm a Republican, and so when it comes to tax business, when it comes to tax business in it,
That
when it
came
comes
out. That came out of no. That came out of nowhere.
and I have a certain point of view on taxing,
You're gonna
and
be supporting Trump?
I don't know yet. I have no
This
idea
guy,
yet.
man.
So, but
Let's get into the
let's not
conversation.
extend it. But in terms of I'm a fiscal conservative here.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily support Trump, but
Yeah.
in terms of fiscal issues, I tend to agree with the Republicans here. And so my view on taxes and whatnot, it seems to be slanted more to the conservative point of view, which is have a simple tax system, right?
Mhm.
Do not overcomplicate things.
Yeah.
Make it simple. Make the tax simple if you can, right? In a place like Liberia, I think that with all the complexity that comes with it, is not a competitive uh, um, tax system for a country like Liberia right now. Because if you think about it, we're not even collecting all of the taxes in GST, right? We probably haven't plugged all these holes yet.
Hmm.
So we are not even tax efficient yet in terms of our collection, and then we just want to sidestep that, even though we didn't optimize, we didn't collect optimal, we didn't optimize the tax collection, but we just
Yeah.
want to get rid of it and say, yeah, we're bringing a new complex
Bring in
system
a
here,
nose. Right.
whereby, you know what I mean. So my thing is, keep it simple. Let's stay with where we are. Let's optimize what we got, right? Let's plug the holes. Let's make sure that the government is getting of, I don't like to use this fair share thing because it's a Democrat
It's being
thing,
more
but
efficient on
let,
tax collection. Right.
yeah, let's make sure
Right.
that this system we have is more efficient and we are
Right.
getting optimal tax of revenue from what we already have,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
Because if you are optimally collecting your taxes, right, you should be able to raise enough. Like, let's do what needs to be done. Let's, I mean, you can't just say this is there. You can't just go to a new system when you have not exhausted what the possibilities are in the current system. We
Hmm.
have not applied technology. Everything is mostly manual in our country. How people pay their taxes, right?
Hmm.
People still touching money and carrying it to banks and whatnot, right? So that's a whole different conversation for another day for central banking and whatnot. But the way we pay taxes, maybe we should think about it, how you pay taxes, how you pay your taxes to the government, right? That's another thing. Technology has a whole lot to do with this. Maybe if we scale up the technology and see, this is not out, this GST is actually good. GST is not bad. It's a matter of fact, it's a point of sale thing, right? You pay it. The problem we have, and it always goes back to, is we don't know who is who. So in terms of taxes, there's just a few. Yeah, you can identify one or two businesses, but there are missed opportunities there also for individuals, for small businesses, and and other thing, other havens that could be created around this structure. We have not exhausted all those possibilities, and
Hmm.
then we're trying to saddle the country now with a new system because it's popular in the region. So we're
Hmm.
trying to saddle people, right? We're trying to overtax people, so to speak, right? Because of what?
Yeah.
Someone sat on one day and said, we ain't getting enough revenue, we need domestic revenue. And so somehow this is the domestic. So, let's bring a new complex system and maybe it will generate few more millions of dollars compared to, and it's not even, the thing is, I don't even want to agree with that premise that somehow this VAT is going to be better off in terms of revenue generation for the government than what we have right now. There's just no evidence to that. Like I was saying
Yeah.
to you,
Yeah.
we look at it here in the United States, right? And that's why the United States don't even pay attention to those things,
Yeah.
right? We
Yeah.
look at it
Yeah.
and it's not better than what we have here currently. And what we
Hmm.
have here currently is almost akin to GST.
Yeah. And it goes back to, I think, what you said on the previous discussion earlier, the previous question is what you said on the previous discussion is we we didn't really, you know we don't like to be different, right? We could have been different if
Yeah,
it's the GST system that we had, in as much that it was different, it is different. Oh, that we still do have it. They haven't implemented that. In as much that is different, right? If we can perfect it in terms of how we make it more efficient in terms of how we collect taxes from either the businesses, the income, the trade taxes, and all the other real estate taxes and other tax system, and we create like a very good broad-based system, there wouldn't be a need to say we want to escape from it to go to another system, unless we feel that escaping from the GST and going to VAT makes us more competitive regionally, then we can say, hey, maybe this is a tax policy strategy we should consider. But we, like you said, we haven't really considered that. We haven't really perfected the collection processes. Like one of the argument I think that I had with Conan last week was that the few system we needed to put in place, how we collect our taxes, how we do what is it, even our accounting, whether we require businesses to file taxes every year to make sure that if we miss some, we can go to your business and tell you, okay, my man, you owe us 500 for the year, you know well, that's based on my assumption. based on my observation of looking at the kind of business you run. But at the end of the year, let's say you file your taxes and they end up being you end up making 2 million or 3 million a year. I can go back and say, hey, the taxes that we presume that you're supposed to pay are far less than what you owe us based on how much revenue you make. Requiring businesses to do taxes, like the smaller things to make us more efficient in collecting our taxes. We
Yeah.
have done that, but we at least we're thinking. I don't know. I can't even call that leapfrog because leapfrog you use technology, but we're ahead without even doing the fundamental works, and we think all of a sudden that is going to be a more efficient. Is going to make us
No,
more competitive in the
that is
region.
not a silver bullet. That is more like I won't be part of the popular crowd,
Right.
and that has never been Liberia, right? Liberia was never wanting to be. Liberia wanted to be idiosyncratic, right? We wanted
Hmm.
to be who we are. We wanted to have certain things that are akin to being a Liberian. It's almost like what the people do here, right?
Right.
They take pride in being American. We're supposed to be taking pride in being Liberian and trying to look at our stuff that we have that make us that set us apart from the rest of the region and whatnot. Look,
Hmm.
for me, for me personally, we should cooperate where necessary. If it's necessary, we cooperate with the region. We do what because no country is an island. Liberia is small comparatively speaking, so we should cooperate
Yeah.
when it be. But also, we shouldn't give up what makes all who we are at the end of the
Hmm.
day. Just because the rest of the world is doing it and whatnot, that's not the Liberian thing to do, right? There are things that are unique to Liberia, and we want it to be really unique to Liberia because that's what makes us who we are. It's not by fitting
Hmm.
in those other categories. So that's the thing. We have to sit down and say this system. Or the people at LRA or the policy people at the end of the day have to come back and say the reason we're bringing VAT, right? Because from what you can, what you know to be true, right? The current tax administration in the country is not efficient. It's
Right.
not. So you are not you there's you it's going to be very hard to mobilize domestic revenue in a material way, right? So the thing
Hmm.
is, we have to go back to the drawing board and try to pinpoint these pains and said, okay, let's fix this, let's plug this, and let's see how it optimize the tax administration of the country. But barring that, I mean, without that, and you just come and VAT because somebody ate sourly one day, their stomach of food and say, yeah, the people ain't doing it, everybody else doing it, so ourselves we need to do it too because we got to, they make it a seem. And when you look at the release from former finance minister Tway, like Liberia is the only country that is not VAT compliant. Like it's a bad
Exactly.
thing. Like it's a
Right.
bad
Yeah.
thing. Like
Yeah.
okay, we're not VAT compliant. What does that even mean?
Right.
Like, is it a bad thing for the country, or is it, you know what I mean? So you just
Right.
want to take the country into anything just because we're not in it? You can't do that. We have to start having this substantive conversation about what these things mean to us as a
Mhm.
country, what it means to our people, and how it's going to impact them at the end of the day. You can't just be taking us and throwing us anywhere you want to.
So I want to play devil's advocate here. To
Hmm.
their credit in the I think the paper they put out. I think we read that last week. Is that GST at the GST level? And I think I know the answer you're gonna give, but I want to ask that question. So GST collects currently right now 3%, and the switch from that to VAT will increase the revenue base, the tax collection to 6%. What is
That's
your take? What is
that's
your
that's
on that?
sophistry. There's just
Right,
absolutely no economic evidence to that. You can just throw things in paper without evidence. The place we come from, you have
right,
to you have to talk to people like you. Again, I told somebody before, like, bro, problem is not education anymore, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
The people children have went to school, so you
yeah,
can't, and they're still going to school. You can just
right,
you can just come and just throw those things. Oh, you're going to increase by say seven. Who said it? For what? What the research is? Bring
right,
it from legit. Let legit show all the economic data that this thing was premised upon. You
right.
can just say 6% because you're trying to. I mean, I don't understand. It make no sense. I don't even want to delve into that. There's just no evidence to that because the current system as it is hasn't even been optimized. It's haven't been fully used. You haven't utilized it fully, and then you
Do
telling me that you're gonna
so
grow. I don't get it.
do you think that they're going after the low hanging fruit when they could look at, system or strategies to really broaden our tax base. What do I mean by that? By saying that you want to switch from one tax system to another, and you know, broadly just tell people that it's going to take our revenue from 3% collection to 6% without any supporting research, as opposed
Yeah.
to going after you know, the uh, things that can improve your tax collection in our country. To make make it easy to register business, make it easy for people to pay taxes, online. Uh, uh, get rid of the high importation costs at the port, and maybe look at opening another port and really make sure that people you have a lot of economic activity coming into the country to really give you revenue generation.
How that
Instead of
thing you
doing
talk?
that,
That thing you talking
you
is
go
sounding
after
so
the
good.
low
Yeah. How
hanging
come these
fruit.
guys? And the part about it, and I don't like to disparage people because
Right,
these guys have come to this place and went to school just like me and you. And
right,
when you go to school here, these things are taught, right? The thing you're talking, and I'm magic.
right,
You went to school, you learn certain principles and whatnot, and you're talking about it. How come?
right.
And these highly educated guys, right, who the people entrust their future with, cannot come up with these things. How high it is instead of just VAT and MAT, whatever it is, T they want to put out there. The current system is not even being fully utilized. Like
Hmm.
you said, make it easy to register business. That's
Hmm.
one. Two, uh, uh, um,
Uh,
maybe open another port of entry
yep,
besides the free port. Bring it up to standard, or maybe do another airport also. Maybe we should
yep,
look into bringing another airport, not just
right,
Robertsfield,
right.
right? Do this, invest. You have government have to invest. When
Hmm.
you invest, then you get return. So what kind of public sector investment are we doing, right? Let's look into that. You collecting the current amount of money you're collecting, you're not even using it properly. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? And then you still want to increase more burden on people, right? You can't
Yeah.
do that.
For me, I think that's the only explanation I can give is that those things that we mentioned, such as making it easy to register business, make it simple for people to be able to know first, how much tax you're supposed to pay every quarter, be able to pay those taxes online. It's very expensive. When I mean very expensive right now to import cars or any goods into Liberia. Look at, sitting down with those people that have control over the port, or even looking at opening another port to make it more competitive for Liberian to bring. Like those are the difficult things to do, but you leave the difficult things and you just come to the low hanging fruit, and you know that the low hanging fruit you're coming to, there's really not much you're going to yield from that, but it's just
No,
an optics in terms of
it's
gaining political
optics.
point to make people
Yeah.
seem as if you're doing something. I think that's what this is all about. But I want to give them credit, but I don't see anything
And here is the thing
tangible
you would
with
think,
that,
right?
with
You would
that.
think
Yeah,
this is a this VAT thing is a CDC policy, and that's why the
right,
people say there's no difference between the political parties in Liberia, right?
right.
This is a CDC policy that the Unity Party just came in and just pick up and say, "Listen, we're bringing VAT. CDC proposed VAT, so we're bringing VAT." They have no in any serious country. There will be a point of divergence, right?
Hmm.
It would be like we disagree on taxes with these people, and so this VAT thing will never see the light of day. Let them come by and
Exactly.
win election again and make argument for the VAT. But instead of that, they just took it up and ran with it.
Right.
Right? There's no difference. There's no ideological, and this is where you make skins. Right? That's where people get to know your views and what your visions for the country look like. Right? You
Hmm.
can just take things and run with it. Like CDC proposed VAT. United Party said they want more CDC to come implement VAT. That's what you're keen to power for. You getting what I'm saying? So there's no fundamental actual substantive difference between these people. You just take anything and just shove it down the people's throat. These guys, somewhere wherever the idea came from, he proposed it, and now Bema Kamara, who's supposedly supposed to be um a well-rounded person in this environment, and just they're gonna be implementing VAT.
It's not a. Well, I don't want people to see what I'm about to say as a political jab. It is not at all. I think I agree with you that the current administration is no different from the previous one in terms of
Mhm.
competence level. I think what we're used to is they kind of what we call this like flamboyant. They kind of give you this kind of flamboyant vibe to make it seem as if these people are educated people that come here. At least it's going to be different. But in terms of from the competitive substances standpoint, they don't really have that skill set. And this is why they just, like you said, this is why they were able to take what the CDC had as a policy without even vetting it to say, hey, this other
Yeah.
administration put this thing forward. Let's really look into it to see if it was really
No.
different from our policy. What they just grab it and threw it out there, right? But and this is why I think we I don't want to get into the political side, but I agree with you.
Nope.
There's not really
Please
much
don't.
of an ideological difference. Here's a question I want to ask you before we switch to the next one. How
Mhm.
do you think businesses are going to respond when this is implemented? What do you think is going to
No,
be
this
the
would not be
impact?
implemented in my view. This should not be implemented. This particular thing should not even see the light of day. If you go to Liberia and see the day-to-day workings of the country,
Hmm.
it's not far from 1847. I'm telling
Hmm.
you, things are still virtually, I mean, literally manual in the country. Everybody, like the way we do stuff in Liberia is archaic. Like I'm not being down on the country. I love my country. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. I
Hmm.
think everybody should go home. I think there's a lot of things that can be done if everybody go home. But the system as it is hasn't there hasn't been a lot of change, a lot of like we haven't revisited the way the country the way the people set it up in 1847. There's
Hmm.
not a serious we have not looked at that country since 1847 to say there are certain things here that we need to fix. So if you implement VAT right now, let's say you implemented VAT and
Right.
people first of all let's look at how people go like there's no digital transaction in the economy, right?
It's
One
none.
two,
Right.
so people don't have businesses don't have POS, don't have point of sale that will
Hmm.
be like record your receipt, like your taxes and all of it. Very few businesses have it, but
Hmm.
the vast majority of people, everybody, it's a cash based economy. So how do
Hmm.
you calculate that there, right? I don't know. How is the business owners going to get a rebate from the government? I don't know,
Hmm.
right? All those things haven't been thought of, right? Because it's an added layer of expense you adding on businesses already that are struggling, right? You're
Hmm.
adding a whole different layer of that to a small business, to a restaurant business and whatnot that they don't even have the capacity to handle right now. The common
Right.
thing for them to even do people and again it's a cash based economy, right? How do you so you're taking cash to the bank to put in the government account? How do people do these things? Like you have to understand how the country works, and then when the people talk about this policy and like how whether it makes sense or not. So if I go to a restaurant to eat, or say I went to a small business, let them make a restaurant, but a small business to buy something, I'm not using a card. I'm not using a credit card or debit card or whatever. I'm using
Hmm.
cash. So I go there, I pay cash. Let me give you an example. We went to some kind of nice place up there to eat on Broad Street, right?
Hmm.
Right up Broad Street there.
Hmm.
Like you go into Ducor, it's a nice little place there. It's like it's not a restaurant, but I don't like to call it Kobo shop because it's between a restaurant or Kobo shop, but the food is
Hmm.
really good. Right? It's a very nice place that I ate to twice. The lady can cook. If you ain't like bro, check it out. I don't know the name though, but it's right there up going to so
Good
yeah,
description. I like it.
yeah. So it's right there. It's nice. It's very nice to eat. But point to you is we go there, we're not using card. They bring you the food, you eat, you pay cash. You
Hmm.
don't know how much taxes you paying in that the price of the food. You don't know how much taxes you paying in there, let alone VAT or add whatever
Hmm.
taxes you paying in there. But it's baked in, right?
It
I
is.
don't know. It's baked into the price. Whatever tax is the GST that we have right now is baked into that price, right? The
Right.
woman
Right.
she add her profit margin plus whatever taxes. That's why I assume I'm paying to her in the GST system. Now,
Correct.
is this woman register? Is this business register? Is this lady small business register enough to know that she's supposed to take 12% tax from there to GST tax to remit to government? Is she
Mhm.
remitting that money to government? I
You
don't
don't know.
know. Does
Right.
she have the capacity to even like account for these things? I don't
We
know.
don't
All
know.
I know the
Right.
food was good. I ate,
Right.
and I recommend you go there to eat. But
Right.
I don't know all those things. So think about this is 99.9% of the businesses in Liberia. This is how it operates. And then you're gonna take VAT and compound that. So how that woman supposed to know that okay, the palm nut or the palm nut that I bought from the market, I pay VAT on it, right? So now I
Have
added
to
value
add.
to it. I turn it into palm butter. So it's palm butter now. She added value, but now she got to go back to the government to get her rebate for
Right.
that tax that she paid on the palm nut, right?
Right. Right.
So
Right.
like you understand the complexity. We have to break these things down for people to understand how the actual VAT system these guys are talking about is going to work. And you look at Liberia, does that person have the capacity to do that?
Right.
You know what I
And
mean?
I agree with you. I think that's looking at it from the, I was looking at it from but that's like you just brought it down to the layman explanation of it, how to look at it, and how do you think someone like that, knowing that we transition to VAT where there's an added layer of tax burden on her now, how do you think what impact you think that's going to have on her business?
No,
Now
it's not. She's not.
compound that
Listen,
over thousands
that's
of thousands or millions of businesses in the country, if we even have million
what
businesses.
what I just illustrated just now.
Right,
That's GST.
right,
The government more than likely is not getting that money, that tax from that particular business. So that's money that the government is not getting. One, probably because the business is probably not registered. One, and if
hmm
it's not registered, it's probably not paying taxes too, right? But a lot of people go there every day. That could be a small business tax, right? That the
right,
government is missing out on.
hmm
Again, we should identify people, assets, and businesses. That's a government function, right? That woman not going to willingly go there and say,
you
I
won't.
can't pay tax. No, you
No.
have to identify her for her to do it. And
hmm
so until we can do those things, that is a illusionary, is a illusion. Is just going to bother few people, like the few Moravians that have capacity to go eat out. Maybe that they didn't, it's going to bother them, and then they're going to stay
Right.
home and start cooking the food from home and having their significant other cook the food and eat it from home. Then you're gonna
Yeah.
kill restaurant business. You're gonna
Yeah.
kill entertainment spots. You're gonna do all those things. You're gonna kill the economy basically. You're gonna take jobs from them.
Yeah. That's exactly what my whole thought process, and I thank you for explaining it to that level. That's exactly my whole thought process. That I don't think we, in from a short term standpoint, we just think, hey, we're not collecting enough revenue right now, and the system might be the problem as opposed to the processes that we use to collect that, instead of
Yeah,
looking at the processes. And we
yeah.
didn't even look at, the implication on these businesses. And I think like you highlighted, one of the biggest thing is be able to identify businesses. Like you said, someone like that who's making enough money is a very famous place. People know her. She is not going to,
Mhm.
if she's not registered, nobody's going to, she's not going to pick up and say, hey, I'm going to go register my business. There's no incentives for her to do
For
that,
her to do
right?
that, yeah.
There's no incentives for her, no
We
incentive for
simply
her
to
to
do
do
that.
that, no
Oh
incentives for other businesses to register. So I
no,
agree with you. We or the government of Liberia need to be able to identify businesses and be able to make sure that they register. Over here in this country or any other country, you can do any kind of business without registering,
that's the very first thing
even
you
to
have to
do it
do.
as a sole proprietorship, when you file your taxes, it's identified there that you're a sole proprietor. They still have a way to tax you from a personal side. So unless we're able to do the hard work, I think I agree with you. That is another political
It's just
point.
like it's just a fashionable thing for the guys. They just saw it. Everybody else is doing it, so we're gonna do it. They didn't think it through, right? To
Yeah.
say how it's going to impact the country, the complexities that come with it, and all that stuff. So yeah.
So the next question I want us to look at, I think this is uh, will be that, yeah, I want us to look at it. How does that, given what we've already discussed, from a local standpoint, how do you think that, you know, I mean, given what they say that, the reason for implementing it is every other West African country is on the VAT system. Do you think by switching to VAT now make us competitive regionally? I want us to look at the regional landscape, and does that make us competitive as a business destination place in Liberia now that we have now VAT compliant according to their uh uh you know you know saying that we weren't VAT compliant, but now that we're VAT compliant. Do you think that make us competitive regionally now, as to see Liberia to say, okay, they now have a favorable tax policy that makes it easy for businesses to go there and have a tax that's across the board with other West African countries?
Um, you can talk about that competitive. that's in isolation, right? So
Mhm.
historically, right? Like I was saying to you before we started the show, historically, when you look
Mhm.
at the taxes that Liberia first started on, when you look at it compared to the rest of the region,
Mhm.
Liberia has been right beneath the regional average, right?
Mhm.
She hasn't been up there, she hasn't been on it, she has been beneath the regional average. And the reason for that was, like I told you, um, Liberia is a small country with poor infrastructure,
Mhm.
um, poor, a large uneducated population, right, and stuff like that. If you look at the rest of the region at the time, they had Great Britain were the colonial Great Britain and France were the colonial actors in those regions. So
Yep.
they were building railroads, they were building institutions and stuff like that for their colonies. Liberia did
Mhm.
not have that kind of capacity. So to make her more competitive, the Liberian dealers made a conscious decision. You cannot go over people that already have well-ran infrastructure than what you have. Like, bro did not even have control over her interior at the time, right?
Mhm.
Let alone before she would be able to collect taxes. The very few coastal area that she had control over, she was struggling to collect taxes. So if you look at the legislation over time, the historic legislation for taxes in Liberia over time, you'll see that Liberia were always reducing or fixing her tax rates at the time, and they were always
Mhm.
giving special rates to certain goods that were coming into the country. It was
Mhm.
intentional. It was because she was trying to stay competitive, right? So she had to keep her rate not as low, you know, but not even as high as the prevailing average. So she was somewhere in the middle. So if the prevailing rate in the place was like 15 and the
Mhm.
flow was like what, maybe 10, Liberia would be somewhere between 15 and 10, somewhere in between there, maybe by 12 and stuff like that. So she would be averaging 12% and stuff like that. So, so
Mhm.
historically, we have always been, we have always kept tax flat and low so that we can stay competitive to
Mhm.
encourage more revenue into the government stream. Now, what
Mhm.
happened to that revenue is a whole conversation for another day. But in terms of the way we have actually addressed taxes over time, it has always been where we have kept our rate at a point at a point where we were competitive and not bothered about what everybody else is doing. We've
Mhm.
just tried to stay competitive and do what we need to do at that rate. And if you look at it over time, Liberia actually did stay competitive for a considerable period of time until maybe we got to the concession era and all
Mhm.
those stuff then that started happening, the disturbances that I told you about in the crew codes and whatnot. Liberia were relatively competitive in terms of businesses. There was a booming shipping industry in Liberia because of that, right? People were moving goods and services along the coast, trading with indigenous people, and the
Yeah.
government was getting her taxes as needed, right?
Mhm.
So I don't know. That's the historical part I'm telling you now. I don't know, like I don't know what the current thinking is, right?
Mhm.
Given the fact that we have not optimized what we have right now in terms of tax administration and tax collection, given that we have not done an optimal work on
Mhm.
making sure that the government get enough domestic revenue or mobilize enough domestic revenue, I don't think me, and I'm just going off my professional experience now.
Mhm.
I don't think the new tax or the new VAT tax is going to make us any more competitive, right? Because what's happening right now, like given a scenario in at the port, right? It's so expensive to bring things into the country now. So if you
Mhm.
want to bring a car there, what people are doing now, they used to do what I know now. I know they say they're doing it to Guinea now, but people can just bring their car to Guinea and drive it through Guinea and come to Liberia through the border,
Mhm.
right? Instead of going through that headache to the port and stuff like that with all the bureaucracy, the taxes and all the stuff, then people so Liberia is basically you losing revenue probably to Guinea or
To
so,
Guinea. Yeah.
right? So we have not sat down and said, I don't know if that VAT is the solution to that, or us sitting down and taking a comprehensive look and saying, listen, we need to take a look at why are we losing businesses or tax revenue to other regional countries, right? So we need to
Right.
sit down and think about that, right? But I don't know if I'm not sure if that is the solution, or having a is the solution to that particular problem
Yeah,
or to the particular issue.
yeah. So it's you know, for me, when I and the reason why I think I wanted us to explore this question, when I look at Liberia, I always look at us as, in as much that I think we look at everything that is happening right in our country, right within our 43,000 square miles. We, like you said, we don't operate in a vacuum, right? The world is globally connected, and we're competing, whether we want to believe it or not, we're competing for every dollar in our region with our peers.
Hmm.
And everything we do, in as much that it should be, how does that benefit Liberia? But we should also be thinking about, how does that make us more competitive in the region? How does that put us on path with the likes of the Ivory Coast, the Ghana, the Sierra Leone? Does that make us more competitive? Does that give us a more competitive edge? And I don't know, like you said, I don't know when they thought about implementing VAT, whether that was considered in terms of, if we do move to continuous one, one tax base, continuous tax system, whether that is going to make us more competitive in the region, whether they've thought about that. Another thing that I was wondering, whether they've looked at, how much, foreign direct investment do we have coming into the country right now, right? Based on the system that we have, which is VAT, right? And if we move away from that, given, even if it goes up by even 1% or 2%, how stringent is that going to be to having the same direct foreign direct investment coming into the country if we move to that VAT system? And how much revenue does that take out of our pocket? And if it's taking this much money out of our pocket, how do we account for it on another side of the equation? Whether they've looked at that scenario as well. So that's what I said. Like, do we look at these things competitively, regionally? Like I said, there's one of my favorite rapper. He said, to be the best, you have to challenge the best, right? To be the best, you have to compete with the best. And if the Ghana and the Ivory Coast are the best, we want to compete with them. We have to challenge them on things that they're doing as well, certain things that they're doing right, that we have to emulate on them as well, to be able to compete in a
But
region.
let
Yeah.
let's look at what those countries have in that makes them in terms of their comparative advantage and what they have
Mhm.
done over time. I will leave Ivory Coast out because I don't want to do Ivory Coast. Ivory Coast has been like, let's look at Ghana. Most of us pass through Ghana,
Mhm.
right? When you pass through Ghana at the time, Ghana was nothing. Ghana was like
It
like
was a
whole
dirt
country, like yeah,
desert.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so they have done the legwork. They have invested in their infrastructure. One, two, they
Mhm.
have invested in the kind of business environment that they have there, meaning that they have like look at the judiciary. They have so they have done a whole lot of legwork that got them to where they are now. Meanwhile,
Mhm.
yeah, we had a war and whatnot, but we also have missed opportunities with in terms of the leadership of the country. Also, they have not harnessed the best and the brightest to come and
Mhm.
say, okay, let's take a look at this system since 1847. Let's take a look at this system and see how best we can be compared. Because people used to come from Ghana to Liberia to come buy stuff once upon a time, right?
Mhm.
How did we slip from that? How do we get back to that? So that national conversation and that sense of urgency has to be have to be rekindled again, right? Because think about it. Let's say me and you have $1 billion investment to make in the region, and we're
Right.
looking for where to make that $1 billion investment. One, as an investor, you'll be looking at one, where's the law favorable to me, where
Mhm.
the judiciary is not corrupt and whatnot. That if anything goes south, I can trust the judiciary. I can trust this court system to give me justice. That's one.
Mhm.
Two,
Mhm.
what kind of infrastructure does this country have, right? If I set up my business, would I be able infrastructurally, with it, my business be able to thrive, given the kind of infrastructure that they have in this country, and so forth and so on. Three, what kind of tax system that they have down there? Is their
Right.
tax is the tax rate higher than the rest of the country with comparable infrastructure or better infrastructure and whatnot? So those are the things that me and you will be looking at as investor, not necessarily foreign investors self, but just
Right.
for capital formation. If we want to like form local businesses or local conglomerate, those are the kind of things that we'll be looking at, right? That's the things that give impetus to capital formation. You got to look at
Yeah.
all these things holistically and say, if you look at it and giving that $1 billion, you will probably go to Arico. That's what you have. Is no surprise that you have Google, you have all the big tech companies trying to have hubs in Ghana. They were trying to have hubs in Ghana, right? So because of the comparative analogy, because of the legwork that Ghana have done over the years, same thing with Ivory Coast, right?
Yeah.
That $1 billion would probably fall. I'm talking about a competitive process now. I'm not talking about where people can make sweetheart D with corruption and everything inside. I'm talking about in terms of a very competitive environment.
Mm-hmm.
Like bro will lose that investment to her regional partners
Original
like
peers. Yeah.
Ghana,
Yeah.
Ivory Coast, and possibly Nigeria and other places. Like bro will
Yeah.
lose that kind of investment, and so that's what we are up against. And so we need to sit down and think about these things methodically, right? You can't just sit down today, you're head to the Kobo shop and say we want VAT. These things needs to be thought about. When people go out food, they can talk a lot of stuff. I'm telling you, I've been there. When you eat, when you eat your golf food, you can talk a lot of crazy things. And I'm telling
You
you,
see, when
things feel
someone
like
joined, they can tell a lot of crazy shit. Now you see when
my
somebody go for you,
yeah,
like,
we are
bro.
going for because no, I'm telling you, drunk. That's a luxury. To get drunk like bro, you have to be luxurious, right? Like I'm not saying so, but when you eat, typically when you eat, you sit down, you eat, you can start thinking about things that that were not thought about before because you're going for now. You can just start talking foolishness. So that's what happened typically, right?
Yeah.
We haven't sat down and like said let's think about these things holistically, how it would
Mm.
benefit the country or how it would make us competitive, like because think about we are a small country. We have to
Yeah,
do
we are.
we
We are.
have
Yeah.
to do things. We can't do things like the rest of the people, and we small and we're not plenty
Mm.
comparatively speaking of the rest of the people. So we have to do things that are unique, that makes or that makes us competitive and whatnot. So yeah, that's what we have to do.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Thank you. I think we have two comments here. Let's go to that, and then we'll jump into. Man, sometimes some people can appear on this show that you never hear from years.
public speaking secret 101. Go ahead, public speaking.
Public speaking secret 101. You said that is more suffering for the poor and more jobs for the
Propagandist.
propagandists. Yeah.
Yeah, he probably right.
He has another one here. Public speaking. Like sometimes I want to uncover the identity of some of these people.
Is
He said, what measure job creation action balance? What? What measure job creation action balance out increase
in
in
tax
tax
bracket.
bracket?
So
Is that a question or a statement? I don't understand.
he's probably asking a question, what have they done? So you
Right.
want to tax people, it's almost like what we're talking about here, right? You want to tax people, the few people that are working. What have
Hmm.
you done to expand the tax base? That's what he's trying to get at here.
Okay.
What
Perfect.
have you done to expand the tax base that before you come in increase taxes right now? So
Mm,
without, you know what I mean? Basically
mhm.
what we've been saying, the few group of people that are working that they didn't want you coming here with these taxes here because a lot of people are in the informal sector or not working. So what have you done to increase or expand this tax base? That's what he's getting at. It's
Mm.
just like the way he worded it, right? But what
Yeah,
have
yeah.
you done to expand the tax base before you come and bring taxes back? I mean, you come and increase taxes on the people that are already here. You haven't done, and that's a fair
That's a great question.
question,
Yeah, yeah. All right.
right?
Yeah. Now,
How about
imagine someone asking that kind of question. I mean, you would think those should be fundamental question that should be part of the research question, things to consider. Like, how have we brought in our tax base? How do we brought in our tax base? Um, and from what I've seen, there's not really, as I always like to give this example. There's a guy, actually, we had him on the show here, who I don't know if he's gotten back to shipping. He used to ship, I think, every month, probably 3 containers going every month. Um, because the cost of clearing a container has gone up significantly high, even to free one car. You buy one car from here, you can get a used car here for 7K. You pay another 1.5 or 1.2 to ship it, depending on where you ship it from. But to clear that same car from the port, my man, it'll cost you around $3,000 to $4,000, right? Just that same vehicle, right? So the guy went from shipping 3 containers a month to once a month. Now I think he's relegated his shipping to probably uh I think he's last time we spoke, he said he'll do it every holiday. You know, that's how expensive it's gotten. So meaning that the people that he used to ship for, because it's gotten so expensive that they don't ship that much anymore. And that is
Yeah.
just because we have that one gateway of entry to the country, and they have strangulated the cost of doing business in there, that people like him are have scaled back in terms of the level of shipping. Not only people like him, but people like us who want to ship cars in Liberia have, we found a different alternative route to do that. So like those basic fundamental cost of doing businesses, impact on businesses, and how do you solve for those problems to, in the system that you have before you even migrate to a different system. Like we have not really sat down and put too much effort into thinking about those
Man,
kind
the
of,
thing, the
right,
thing about the amount of people you're crowding, basically what that shows is you're crowding out possible revenue sources now
right,
from
right,
that high so before he used to ship 3 continents, now he
right,
only shipping on holidays, you said. So
right.
that's 2 continents. That think about the amount of revenue, the lost revenue there for
Yeah.
those 2 continents to the government of Liberia. So without taking that into consideration, you just jump to VAT. You don't fix
Mm,
this problem yet, but you just move into VAT because somebody said again. I hate to make it like that, but it don't seem like when you put it under scrutiny, the idea of a VAT in Liberia, when you put it under scrutiny, it just doesn't make sense.
mhm.
It's almost like somebody just sat down there, their stomach was full, and they decided, yeah, this thing that people doing down there, we need to do it here too, without any consideration, any
Right.
nothing, no nothing for the country and what it would mean for it. And they just decided for publicity stunt or whatever you want to call it, and
Yeah.
that's it. And then you would think the new guys that got elected will come and say, well, we disagree with the people in their own taxes, those things not good for the country, and that will show some sort of difference,
Right.
and whatnot. But instead of that, they just pick it up from where these guys left off to bring it. So think about it, lost revenue sources down there, and you losing revenues that probably less revenue mean less collection agent, less custom
Mm,
agents. You will not need a lot of them. So the possible public sector jobs there, you probably go in and think about the private sector aspect of it also, right?
mhm.
And it's just have the cascading effect for these things is just too much, and we don't take our time to like pass them out. And yeah.
So my last question to you before we wrap up, what do you think is going to happen? Do you think this VAT is going to get implemented into law? Because the last time we were on here last Saturday, I have not heard anybody else say anything about it. I haven't heard anything about it in the news. Do you think they're reconsidering, or do you think this will actually
No,
go through to become
no,
a
they
law?
have not. The way things works in Liberia, this thing might probably go through. It probably might, because the
Right,
reason you haven't heard about it is because probably the guys are not listening, they're not paying attention to it, right? The
right, right,
legislators, they aren't paying attention to it, they're not listening. And but some at some point, if the executive um wants to push this, it will get passed. It
right.
will get passed without any kind of serious conversation like we have. It definitely going to get passed. People are not going to think about what it means for the people, for the country. It's going to get passed.
But do you think they the same problem I have with this vast system is the same problem I have with the budget problem. We have people overseeing the budget passing who have never balanced a checkbook in their lives, but they're overseeing the budget of a sovereign nation. And you know, the same problem that I'm having with I don't know if we have any CPA or
No,
savvy
we do.
business person on a in our Senate, or who look at these things on a different angle that we're looking at it right now, to look at it on a broader lens, to be able to assess it from that lens. And for me, that is the kind of fear that this thing conjure up every time I think about it. Yeah.
Yeah, but it is because our politics is not issue based. Me and you talking about very substantive issue here that in any country, serious country politically, this would be like dynamite, right? Like
Right.
you try to putting increasing taxes on people, it will be you will probably lose the next election or
Right.
whatever. Yeah,
Exactly.
you will see it, right? You probably will lose the next election given the kind of topic we're talking about. Again,
Mhm.
this country actually was when became what it is because of taxes, right?
Mhm.
And people forget that. Like before, there was no any kind of glamorous anything that made this country to be independent. It was over taxes.
Mm-hmm.
The leadership of the day saw that they needed taxes, and the British were not paying their taxes, or foreigners were not paying their taxes, and they wanted to collect taxes.
Mm-hmm.
And when they protested, or they went, they tried to strong arm the British. The British said, "No, you guys are not who you are. You're not a nation state, so we can't pay you taxes." And so, like, bro, say, okay, if that's what it is, what does it take to be a nation state? Well, you have to have a constitution, you have to be recognized, you have to have a flag, yeah, all those things. Like, bro, just went through the motions, and she knocked them out. And okay, we independent now. What else we need? Well, you need to be recognized. Okay, Joseph Jingin Rao went to Europe. He met Queen Victoria. He met Napoleon. He met all these people in Belgium and why not. Like, bro, got the recognition. She had treaty in place for her, for collecting her taxes, and that's what it is. So these are serious issues historically. And when people come here and just want to just like VAT, and this country was almost torn apart. We had a president, a vice president that resigned indirectly because of taxes,
Mm-hmm.
right? King Yancy resigned because of taxes, right? You take these things for joke. We have a president that got killed because of debt,
Mm-hmm.
Roy, right? We take this thing for joke. Historically, these have been serious issues. Economic issues, financial issues that always plague this country. And our leaders needs to be very very delicate, very very introspective when they turn to form policy around these things, because the history surrounding it is not good. It's absolutely not good.
So, are you are you implying that if this happened, we could have similar, well, not to that level, but we could have similar, some kind of backlash if that is implemented? Do you think we could see a pushback from businesses or even the citizenry if the VAT system is passed? That because
the,
of.
the, I reckon there might be pushback from a few people, but I don't know how it depends on the groundswell, right? How many
Mhm,
people are impacted by this and where you find yourself,
mhm,
right? So it depends on how much people are impacted at the particular point in time. If this is going to impact the vast majority of the people, like I told you, what happened when the government did this sort of domestic revenue mobilization
mhm,
a decade or a century ago, or a few centuries, a century ago, a few decades ago, right? There was war. There was crew cause war. The indigenous people and the government fought down there very hard too. It was war. People died, villages was burned, people lost their lives over these things because the
mhm,
people felt that the government were unjustly taxing them, and they were not getting the benefit from their taxes. And that was right, right? So the- I don't know if our leaders have a sense of history or they just don't care. Everything goes in the country because as a leader, you should be guided by history when you make decisions. Like the kind of decision you make should be history should be your guide so that you don't make the same mistake that were made in the past.
mhm, mhm, mhm,
Our current leaders don't seem to have no any sense of history. They just that's what would make a guide to a leader to say VAT is happening here. Like, bro, the only country that don't have VAT, so we want VAT here.
mhm,
That
mhm,
that's the kind of decision without any regard for how this country developed, how it came to being, the economic history of this country, what have transpired without any regard for that. That will make somebody to say that. But I tell you, if he had a pause and just went over the historical records, I'm not talking about like the social and the order of rest, but economically, the thing that stimulated or led to the rise of the country,
yeah.
yeah, they would probably take a pause and say, whoa, 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 this thing, we need to think about it again, right?
Mhm,
Because maybe
mhm,
you might not have a crew cause war, maybe you might not have a war, you might not have
right.
but you might have the kind of like
And up.
instability and
Right.
economic uproar and stuff
Right.
like that. People will be suffering and all the kinds of stuff that you might have.
Right. The revenue that they're trying to collect, it may even become, they might even have a negative impact on people
On
even
Yeah,
wanting to pay taxes. Yeah, and it could
that
impact
that's
them.
that's how
Like,
it is.
yeah.
And then when you take me and you and throw us into the scene, then it will probably just get bad because then we'll be speaking more and more now. We'll be trying to really educate our people what a particular thing mean, and they will not let us there.
Aye,
Then
aye, aye.
the people will really get vexed with it now.
Yeah. Well, my man, this was a great conversation. I
Thank
think
you, Gabby.
we're on the hour and 30, well, hour 20 minutes. So mine, I want to hear your final thoughts on this process. You can take it from any angle. You can look at it from, we've been discussing, the economic impact of it, either domestically or regionally, or even you can look at it from the angle as you did earlier from the business woman who shopped you at. What do you think her reaction is going to be when she hear those kind of things? Yeah.
You basically gonna pull her out of business. She doesn't have
Yeah.
you pull her out of business, and you're gonna ruin um the social settings for most people, because the reason a woman business exists is because people that work right next to the finance ministry,
Hmm.
people that work to the U.S. embassy behind there, and other people in and around Monrovia. That's where they go to have lunch. I mean, I'm not doing a promo for her, but the food is good.
Hmm.
If you dare, check it out, no doubt. But she doesn't. That's where people go to have lunch, right? And that's why she have that business there now.
Hmm.
As it is with GST, I don't know if she's even paying taxes
Hmm.
to the government. She could be, I could be very wrong, but
Hmm.
she could be. And if she's paying taxes, what kind of taxes is she paying? How much taxes is she paying? Like you said, people needs to be filing taxes to the government so that they can know how much taxes the person pay, how much revenue they got, and that. But you can't do that without identification. You have to identify the business owner. You have to identify the business. You have to identify a whole bunch of stuff. The asset, whether the business
Hmm.
is a lease premises. You know what I mean? Whether it's a, and what kind of business is it? So you have to do the identification. That's a government function that we need to do. And then
Hmm.
when you do that, you are basically taking a woman from the informal sector now to a formal sector because she's recognized in her economic activities that she's doing. Then when
Hmm.
you do that, now you give her the capacity. Now that she's registered, she can the government know about her business, what kind of business she's doing. Then she will probably find her late child and went to make it complicated. Or common bookkeeping can do. Like
Yeah.
listen, you can mark your expenses down, how much you create. It's not hard. Do the math right here. Then when you finish, you show her how to do the calculation. We're charging you 12% GST. So whatever amount of money. So when a man can buy, if the kobo costs what? $100 and the GST is 10%, right? So that man's supposed to pay $110 to you for the kobo here. So you take $100 and you get the government that $10. That's what you're
Hmm.
supposed to do GST wise,
Hmm.
right? Now that's how it's supposed to work for what the tax system is in terms of the GST.
Hmm.
That's simple. It's easy for her to calculate, right? The woman can calculate her $10 and get the government. Say 100, get the government her 10. If finish, we
Right.
move on, right? If you bring VAT here now, then the woman will have to start calculating from the time they cut the palm nut on the tree, right?
Anyway, go ahead. Let's stop. Yeah.
From the time they cut the palm nut from the tree, how much the man I sell the palm nut to the car, how much he charge for it, how much taxes he charge for it. Then that guy will buy the palm nut and pay the taxes on it. Then when he bring it to the market woman and the market woman I get it, then she will buy it also from that guy with the taxes. The guy will mark it up, then he add taxes on it. Then that
Hmm.
market woman will buy it. Then that guy that just sold it to the market woman and got to do rebate to the government for that tax he paid to the guy that cut the palm nut, remember? So he got to do rebate now to the government, right? Then the government got to make sure that man he overpaid. Then that old man now sell it in the market now got to take it now and sell it to my old man here now to go make the palm butter.
Hmm.
Yeah, for all to eat it. Then my old man, then the old man now, how much she said she not market up, she not sell it to them, my old man. Then the old man too got to go back to the government for rebate because
Hmm.
she had taxes there and once she paid taxes to that other to that paper that sold her the palm nut from the man. So you see the cascading effect of that.
Right.
Do we have the capacity for that nonsense?
Although we do not currently.
The people
Right.
then the economic actors in the country, do they have that capacity? That's me
No.
just breaking VAT down to you. That's what it is. This is what's going to happen,
Hmm.
right? Then before the Oma bring the food to us, then we eat it. Then we gotta pay, the taxes on it also. Then we finish eating it and pay the taxes, but the Oma still gotta go back for that whole rebate that she paid in that other tax that she already paid for. Down, you know what I mean? So
Right.
like every stage of the process, you have to pay taxes, right? That's what VAT is, and then you have to. There's a rebate process there because if you don't do the rebate, that means these people will be overpaying, right? There'll be a cascading effect there, and you don't want that. So the government have to do a rebate for these people that are already paid taxes. You have to get a guy by his tax that he already paid for the addition. That's what it is. So, given the complexity of this whole process, I don't
Hmm.
foresee how you're going to implement that in Liberia. The government does not have the capacity for rebates, right? Except you're telling me you're going to increase government now, and we already have a problem with wage bills. So to absorb that particular function that I just told you, you have to
Yeah,
increase the employment in government. You have to increase government. That means you're increasing the wage bill. So what you're trying to solve for in revenue
you're
is
right.
coming out in the form of government of salaries and
Expenditure.
whatnot.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's what you're doing. So basically, you're not solving the problem, right? You're compounding the problem. That's what
Hmm.
that is going to do to our people. So you don't want that. You want to stay with the GST and optimize GST. That's what it is
Yeah.
because it works.
Perfect. That is. I don't think you could have said it any better. I think that is. I like how you took it from that example of that lady with the shop and was able to explain that. Especially the cascading effect of what that is. So I think that actually, hopefully, that anybody here, I think that was the most simplest way to explain it. So hopefully everyone was able to learn something from this whole conversation. I don't think I have anything final word to say. I think we
All right,
you,
man.
you did that perfectly. Um, yeah, it was a great discussion. Hopefully, I'm sure one thing that we know for a fact is that in as much that we sit on here and talk about this thing, we think people don't see it. If a day or two later you go on YouTube, like 1,005, 2,000 people watch, they go, yeah, they go on the show and watch it on YouTube. So I know for a fact people in the government do watch our shows here. So hopefully they pick up something from there and able to heed to some of this. I agree with you that I think that is a political ploy, not anything benefit to the country. So hopefully the audience was able to learn something from here. And if you watch it later, you have something that you learn from there. I hope hopefully you learn something from there as well. And this is what we do every Saturday. But it was good having you here, my man. And hopefully we'll see you here again next Sunday. I mean next Saturday. As far as what we're going to talk about, I don't know yet. Actually, we want to talk about uh I think that's way ahead of our time, but I have a guy who's working on that on the progress in the creation of digital currency in the country here. Um,
Mm,
and we're going to be looking at it also
okay.
uh um you know where African countries are in terms of that whole process. I know we're right now we're not even thinking about digital currency. We still like our cash. So, but we're gonna have we had him before. We talked about part one, but we're gonna be looking at
It's the same.
the
That guy. I want. I think I want to show the guy that
yeah
talked
yeah
about.
Yemu kind yeah. So I'm trying to coordinate that with him. Hopefully, we'll be able to arrange that to have him on next Saturday. But yeah, it's a great discussion, and thank you for being here. And hopefully you
All
enjoy
right.
the rest of your Sunday, my man.
All right, Gabby. Thank you.
All right, yeah, ciao.
Bye.
I can wrap up this show.
We are Liberian.